guys for joining us on this Convo Fango for this week. We got some people joining us, and they're free to ask some questions throughout, which we'll get to. But I'll kick it off here with a few. So let's go all the way back. Let's rewind the Monster Squad VHS all the way back to 1987. The film comes out the weekend before Dirty Dancing, and I think it was like 1 to 2 weekends after The Lost Boys. It's an incredible summer of movies, 1987. But Monster Squad is not a hit. And then years go by. Like, at what point do you, star of the movie, start to see this kind of fandom form around it? Was it that anniversary screening in 2006 at Alamo in Austin, or was it when was it when you first started to see that there was something special there?
Well, I think, ever since the release, and then HBO and the video store run, like, you run into people that had seen it or liked it or would quote it, every now and then. But it really wasn't, honestly, until that 2006 Alamo Drafthouse screening that, not only that was the moment. I mean, that was the weekend. That was the day that made all of this other stuff, possible. It just launched a resurgence based on that, double sold out screening on a Saturday, and us getting together and being able to go to that. And then everybody connecting on the internet, and Fred Decker telling the audience there that it's up to them, if anybody would ever want a DVD or something, write letters, mail rocks, and ship rocks in the mail or something to a studio that that says they have it. And I'll be damned if that's not what everybody did. And then you end up with the couple of months following that event, where headlining big conventions and starting to tour, and the movies going around, playing on 35 almost every weekend, and you're getting flown out to do a screening. And then, you're at Comic-Con the next year releasing a DVD, and then it just goes from there. So it really was that 2006 Alamo Drafthouse event.
Yeah. And then Lionsgate, does release the DVD with a cover. I'm not sure what movie that cover was for. I'd still love to see it. I guess it was Ryan in some kind of 1999 Brendan Fraser Mummy meets the Goonies Monster Squad Lost Boys mashup. But
That's right.
Anyway, they do release the DVD, which is now very much a collector's item. And then you guys start to do the screenings, as you mentioned, and you start doing conventions, and you start to embrace the fandom. But at one point, do you guys hook up and think like, okay, there's a story to be told in all of this?
Go, Henry. That's you.
It starts with you, because you were doing a version of a documentary before we linked up, and then that turned into something else.
Yeah, it was really because of all those appearances and conventions, and meeting these fans over the years, and hearing these amazing stories of how this movie connected and impacted these people, that I thought those stories were a story. I mean, I've said that about 1,000 times, but that's really what it is. And like Henry mentioned, I sort of had an idea of, we're going into the 30th anniversary year. We're going to do a bunch of conventions and appearances and things. Why don't we just, bring a camera along, or one of our pals that has a camera, and we'll kind of document some of this kind of run and gun type of things, and put some people on camera. And, we'll put it like on our, Ryan and I had a podcast at that time, and, maybe we'll like put it on the podcast website for $1 or something. And I experimented with it at one event, and it turned out kind of what you thought it would be. And I was like, that's not what I see here. And that was right at the time that I was doing a development deal with another project I had, coincidentally, at Lionsgate at the time, that ended up not happening. And the same time, I had just pitched and sold a show for Ryan Lambert, and I had a co-host called Short Ends at Nerdist's subscription channel. And so like those two things really kind of took the front burner for a couple weeks or months. But the documentary idea was still in my head. And then I scheduled a lunch with my friend Jen Oth that works at Pilgrim Studios, and parked out in front of the building to go to lunch one day, and I'll let Henry take it from there.
Me and a couple of friends, Anthony Lizer and Wesley Caldwell, were leaving the building. I was a producer at Pilgrim Studios, and we did a lot of unscripted content, some scripted content and features as well. And Wes recognized Andre right off the bat and said, "Hey, that's Sean from the Monster Squad." And I do a double take, and I'm like, "No way." And I just start to nerd out embarrassingly. But we're talking in the driveway in the parking lot, and I started asking what projects he was working on, and he mentioned a documentary, and I started putting one and one together, saying Pilgrim does unscripted content, and I really want to make a movie. Why don't we put our heads together and pitch that documentary to Pilgrim? And we started to court each other at bars and come up with storylines and ideas. And one of the things that we were talking about is walking away from that kind of just get a digital camera and go to a convention type thing, and really have this be a dedication to why people fall in love with movies and create setups and payoffs and through lines and give it a very premium aesthetic. Hopefully when somebody sits down and watches Wolfman's Got Nards, they can tell that this is made by fans of movies through and through, and it's really a love letter to cinema as much as it is a love letter to the Monster Squad.
Yeah, absolutely, and that is something I want to get into. But I want to talk about then after you guys kind of come together. You go, it just happens to coincide with the next anniversary in 2017, and you go out on this crazy tour, which I got to be deep in the trenches with you guys behind the scenes back from
Absolutely.
my time with Alamo. And so the documentary is also kind of a road movie about you guys kind of coming back together and going on this kind of very like personal, Ashley's, kid is on the tour with you, and it's almost as much about Monster Squad and the fandom as it is you guys going out and you as people and how it's changed your lives beyond how it's just changed our lives as fans. Is that something that, like, I have a feeling the answer to that is that's something you find as you're shooting it, but did you guys really want to explore beyond just, this is what Monster Squad is, this is why people love it? Because it digs deeper. We've seen fan documentaries, but this, I think, goes beneath the surface of that.
It's definitely something we talked about when we were writing out the idea, is the impact a movie leaves. It just doesn't leave an impact on the core audience. It leaves an impact on the people that also help to make it as well, and showing that what that impact turns into. So a fan of a movie can then make movies because they were inspired it, and then somebody who made a movie can stop making movies because of how that impact had, and vice versa. And we really wanted to explore that imprint.
Yeah.
And we just, that year, 17, so many things fell into place that some we thought were going to happen, some we didn't know existed until they got scheduled.
Sure.
But as you can see in the documentary, I mean, we crammed a lot into 90 minutes, but we shot so much footage and went to so many events and were so many days on the road. And like that 17 city Alamo tour wasn't even really on the books. It was a conversation that I was having with Alamo headquarters while we were kind of getting the doc going, and even in the deal phase. And if that hadn't happened, the doc would have been missing a big kind of piece that ended up being an amazing through line, like you said. And it's about that experience of, literally traversing the United States, because we started in San Francisco and ended up in Virginia and just kind of did this. And in the conventions and the people we ran into, the stories we got on the road, the stories that, ended up showing their face on the roads that you could never plan for, big events that happened as we were trying to make this happen, like throwing the 30th anniversary Monster Squad party Friday night at Fantastic Fest. And I did that, like, I don't know what, Henry, a month before. Like, I was having conversations with Zach Carlson and the team at the South Lamar Alamo to like, what are we going to do in this thing? And while we're on the tour, Henry and I are making a movie with the other guys, and I'm signing autographs, and I'm on the phone deciding, to bring in, the awesome Allison Murphy, and we're going to rebuild the treehouse and the highball. It's just all this stuff was happening all at the same time. And I don't even remember how much stuff happened on this road and everything. We were just kind of just flying through the schedule and going, just really chewing up these weeks and months. And before you know it, you go into a room and you look what Henry put together, and it was some great stuff that ended up, coming to pass during that 10, 12 months.
Well, go ahead. Sorry.
It was a lot to tackle when we were doing the tour. And we were doing the road trip aspect. We were cutting as we were going from a minivan while people were in another minivan shooting. And when you're getting that much good footage and that much interesting footage, it's very important that you balance it right for the film. There's a cut of this movie that could have been a road documentary from the beginning to the end. And so we had to decide, is this going to be a road trip? Is this going to be a retrospective doc? Is this going to be a fandom doc? And what we decided is, yes, it's going to be all of the above. And how do we balance that to do a full story?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's so much of what documentary filmmaking is in general. I mean, you have an idea of what you're trying to say and the themes, and, you can kind of outline that out as much as possible, but you're capturing true life, and you're kind of finding it as you're shooting and editing. I mean, the kind of one of the most touching experiences that I think you guys show is when you're on the road and you find out about the guy who can't make it to the screening, and he's in the hospital, and he's just such a devout monster. It's like literally like you guys are his like Make-A-Wish. And you like had to jump through hoops to go visit him. Talk a little bit about that. I can imagine that was probably the most special thing you kind of encountered.
Well, I think that day was more full than everybody remember or knows, because that's also the same day I convinced Henry with a brilliant idea of mine to realize that we were in Corpus Christi, Texas, and we're on the Gulf of Mexico. And I was like, Henry, let's get up and get a sunrise shot coming over the Gulf of Mexico. Like
Corpus Christi, shots, of course, known for their beautiful sunrises. Yes.
And what's crazy is, like everybody gets a sunset shot, because those are easy because you're usually up. But we've already been on the road for a week or two. Henry was like, okay, let's go. And so we jumped in the car at like 4 in the morning and drove down the road and ended up finding the perfect spot. And we got the gear out, and Henry walked out there and set it up and just put the camera on and, and time lapsed it. And we ended up getting this great shot. And then we go and wake up, and everybody was supposed to go to the next town. We're supposed to drive. And I think we were going to Laredo from Corpus Christi, which is a decent drive. And again, my idea was, hey, let's go to that hospital and see if we can go talk to Douglas, the kid that couldn't make it to the screening last night. And Ryan and Ashley are, bleary-eyed, and Ashley's little girl is, asleep in her carrier. We're like, all right. And so we ended up just going cold into this hospital. And one, you're not supposed to really visit people in the hospital that you don't know. Two, he was in a wing of the hospital that wasn't allowed visitors. And it was sort of on a like on a sterile floor.
Yeah.
And then we had
for the people following, going to a hospital and shooting something sounds really good when it comes out, but it is a lot of work to pull the release forms to legally shoot inside a hospital. Yeah. There's like 3 to 4 different layers of approval.
Yeah, and I walked in cold and just asked for whoever the head administrator was on duty, and I mean, luckily she didn't like slam the door in our face and tell us to leave. She said, well, this sounds interesting. Let me figure out how to make it work. And that was like a call to her boss, the board of directors, the hospital president, the legal team, and then had to sign up. And so we were outside for like 2.5, 3 hours just seeing if we could make this happen, unbeknownst to Douglas, who's in his room. And, and then we kind of worked it out, and it's a great bit in the movie.
I know how much you guys shot. I mean, even just when we screened it at Alamo, and we had one of the few, if not only, 35mm prints that any of the theaters are playing, that we got from the Chicago Film Society. And so you guys, all the beautiful kind of 35 stuff that's in the movie with the projector, and just knowing how much you shot at that one screening multiplied by that many screenings, then the Fantastic Fest event and all the sit down interviews, like there has to be stuff that you wanted to put in there, but it just didn't fit within the story you were trying to tell. What's the thing that you're like, oh man, this is the perfect bonus feature for this movie? Was there something that didn't quite make it in that's on the cutting room floor?
I think we're really happy with the final cut.
Yeah.
But with that being said, we cut together an additional hour of special features.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of deleted scenes, extended, great conversations with Shane Black and Fred Decker, where they just kept on going and going. Deleted scenes from the road trip aspect, Fantastic Fest. I think, Andre, is that the one that you wish was still part of the doc, or what are you missing from?
I do. I love it as a bonus feature too. If we ever get to use that. Unfortunately, on this current release, there's no bonus features. That's not our decision. That's the distributor, putting the product out. But that just gives us something, to look forward to in the future and with other releases.
We're gonna release the bootlegs like a hip hop mixtape.
You're just gonna be on a street corner selling them like out of the trunk of your car.
And it's all going to be overdubbed. It's all going to be overdubbed on old Betamax.
Yeah.
So you got to have a Betamax machine to make it work.
I'm just thankful. I kind of had a feeling that once I cosplayed Rudy and rode into a screening full of 300 people on a BMX bike, I felt like, I had a pretty good shot of not getting in the cutting room floor. So I owe it to you guys for immortalizing me.
You made it. And also the horror scene is kicked off by you, right? As I seem to remember. My name is Horace. So. All that great emotional Q&A happened there, and that really kicked off an important part of the documentary.
That was such a touching moment, and I imagine you guys are getting stuff like that at every screening, because I know from hosting, a million of those Q&As, even some of the same ones back to back, each one is completely unique based on, the people that are in there. And that speaks, I think, to that fandom, to the Monster Squad fandom. And I can say from my perspective, Alamo was a place that was all about fandoms around every kind of different movie, and it was a gathering. It is a gathering place of I think, to come together and be able to see other people that love this movie in the same way, and then for you guys to make that the heart of the documentary, of going to those screenings. But I don't know, there's something inherently beautiful about this documentary, in that it is not only a love letter to Monster Squad and the fandom around it, but like, I don't think, from my experience, and you guys can speak to this, I've seen even a fandom within horror genre that's quite like this, because everyone gets to feel like they were truly a part of this movie and keeping it alive, and you get to feel like you're a part of the goddamn club. And there's something very kind of life imitating art, that it's about a bunch of monster kid movie nerds that are kind of the outcast, and they're in a club together, and they love each other, and they go on these adventures together, and there's nothing else quite like that. And so I love that you guys also in the doc explored beyond that, of just what it means to be a fan of something and be a part of this thing that feels special. And you can't engineer that at all. And right. I think that there's something that you guys do that goes beyond just the normal fandom documentary. It goes beyond Monster Squad. I think that's, something that is really beautiful in this documentary. Even if for people who are not, you know, maybe they're not the diehard Monster Squad fan, or they're just kind of coming to it later in life. They didn't grow up, you know, having the VHS passed around at pizza parties in their friend's house in the 80s. Like, there's something in there that I think people can really connect with deeply.
And that was, you know, kind of the main goal from the very beginning, that, you know, Henry and I chatted about endlessly about how do we find a way to tell that aspect of it, because it's not just about one thing. And one of the awesome things that, you know, Henry, you know, kind of put into this overall kind of aesthetic of the documentary was, yes, fandom is fandom, and people like, you know, something similar than their pals, or the same movie or the same song or something. But he had the notion to add in this feeling that we all had, not only with what we're watching, but the shared experience of going somewhere, going into a box, the lights go down, you're sitting with, you know, 100 other strangers and maybe your two best friends to see something new, and the light goes on behind you and the screen starts flickering, and when you leave, something is different because you've experienced something as this group and you have a shared experience. And I think that's actually something that got woven into the overall documentary story, that people take away from that, but they don't realize it happened to them because it happened so deftly. And I love to talk about, you know, there's not a lot of repeats, there's not a lot of spoon feeding in here, but the only shots that we repeat in this movie is that initial going into the theater, the lights go down, and then we come almost full circle at the end of the story, and it repeated those same 2 or 3 cuts to bring you back to that feeling of why we're all here. And it's about that shared experience of going to the movies and seeing something cinematic that can change your life. And that kind of parallels and intersects with the fandom of Monster Squad, because that was a particular story and experience that they had that impacted and changed their life. And it even goes broader with that, you know, in conversations, because that's what movies are. You know, for thousands of years, humans sat around a campfire and told their stories, whether it was their mythology or their expeditions or their adventures or their family stuff or their you know, hunting stories or whatever. And they did that for thousands of years. And then, you know, 100 and something years ago, the movie theater was invented, and people still go and sit together around a flickering light to have a shared experience that takes them to the next day. And I think that kind of also kind of comes out of this as well, hopefully, because that's something I see in it.
No, it absolutely does. And if anything, it makes it kind of a bittersweet watch right now. You know, because
exactly. I'm interested
like
to see.
Yeah,
I'm interested to see how it plays for people right now, since it's such a love letter to the movie theater.
And I caught myself almost speaking of those experiences in past tense, because you know, they are in a way right now. And so as somebody who, you know, I know all of us have grown up valuing that. I mean, it's literally been part of our careers in every, you know, the 3 different ways that it can be, from being, you know, behind the camera, in front of the camera, and then on that side of connecting those movies with people. Like it plays very bittersweetly, but I think that it also plays now in a way that if we didn't already have an appreciation for going our whole lives, you know, the movie theater has always been there. It's always something that we've been able to escape to. No matter how bad things got out there, we always had it. And right now we don't. And obviously there are, you know, it can be looked at as a luxury in some ways. There are very serious things going on right now. But at the same time, I mean, I think that's a true sign of the times that we don't have that experience where we can all get together and watch Monster Squad in a theater together, you know, on 35 millimeter. Like, it's the documentary, I hadn't seen it until like we showed it then at Alamo, when you guys released it, and kind of did another tour back around, and Fango was a part of that. And that was then when I left Alamo and was with Fango, but I hadn't seen it since then. And it plays, there's a bittersweetness to it for sure.
Thank
so
you.
Well, I think it also, I mean, yeah, that's bittersweet because we can't go to the places we want to go, and movie theaters are one of them. But it also hopefully serves as a little bit of a bridge until the time that we can,
Absolutely.
because, maybe, like I said, maybe it's just a bridge. And then Henry and I, we talk about we're looking forward to, next spring or summer of being able to go around and be in person and watch this again with, crowds of retail fans, not just
Yeah.
festival fans. And or maybe they're special screenings, and because we didn't get that kind of pop on on our domestic release, and we've got to fill that over in the international sector as well. So it's all is not lost. I almost see it as maybe this is just a primer and a pump up to that time to where we can celebrate going back and experiencing
Absolutely.
that experience, and maybe it'll just be even bigger next summer.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about that? I mean, what it's been like. You finally, you shopped the documentary around. It played festivals, and found a distributor, and then a worldwide pandemic happened. So what's it been like to release something that is very movie theater based, and of course, like, has had its life up until that point in a movie theater. What's it been like for you guys to release this and get it out there finally?
Well, it definitely felt like the perfect time, even
Yeah.
though everything that's happening with the pandemic is awful, and I can't wait until we get through it. There were a lot of people at home that needed to fill their Halloween fix when we were
Yeah.
releasing Wolfman's Got Nards. And I think since there is so much love for the movie theater in it, it gives people the feeling, oh, remember when we did that? And
Yeah.
there's a little bit of a comfort blanket going on. But as far as the process with everything, it was challenging,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
say the least.
Yeah. You make a great point, because it's like, it's such a nostalgic documentary, obviously, about Monster Squad and the movie, but like, it's nostalgic for like last year. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
um, let's
Yeah, those are things. I
let's
mean, those are weird things that you didn't know that was going to happen, and
no.
nobody did. And we actually, Henry used the word challenging about getting this out, and that's a good adjective. There's a scenario where this movie got released 2 years ago, like right now,
Yeah.
and that didn't happen. And then there was supposed to be a year ago right now, and that didn't happen. And maybe look, I just kind of stay positive on it and say, look, the year that we actually made it, all of these amazing things just kind of fell into place timing wise. And maybe all this delay and the timing of happening of getting it out, maybe it was actually the right timing for it, because people needed to find something to connect to and celebrate while they're unable to do just about anything else except for watch movies that they enjoy.
I think
And
so. I think so. Yeah.
maybe it filled a little gap for everyone right there, or right now, not in past tense. It's only been out for 2 weeks,
Yeah.
or 2.5 weeks. So hopefully it's still continuing, and people are enjoying it. And we love hearing all that feedback that kind of says the same thing.
Yeah. Well, and people are gonna, when we finally can, and I know movie theaters are open in certain places, but it's when we finally can all come back together and in the ways that are reflected in the documentary. I think people are gonna have a whole new level of appreciation for that. And so to be able to come back and have stuff like this that celebrates that in that way, like, and gets us to the other side, like, it really, like you were saying, I know we've talked a lot back and forth about the different times that it almost came out, but like, it really did, it kind of worked out. It was serendipitous when it released. It couldn't have been more perfect timing.
Yeah, I mean, I think so, and I hope so. And I know it seems a little anticlimactic, just because everything is kind of subdued and grayed over, over the last 8 months or so. But I mean, Henry and I still, we still kind of, we didn't have the celebration of a release and like a thing that we thought we
Right.
were going to have, but
Yeah.
we were actually, I was actually in town, and Henry and I got together a couple weeks ago, and I'd been saving I've been saving a bottle of expensive whiskey, for like the release date, and we had to do it a couple days early because we had connected then, and we said, well, it's the same thing. We can still sell it. It's still happening. And when you make a movie that doesn't have an inherent kind of studio distribution, up front, you've got to, getting a movie greenlit is not easy. Getting a movie produced and made and edited is hard. And getting a movie out there with a release and distribution to the world to see is that damn sure isn't easy. And not every movie that gets made ever gets put out. And so you got to celebrate each step. And this is just that step. So we're enjoying it as much as we can.
Absolutely.
But the hope is, with everything that's going on right now, where everything's super dark and there's a lot of questions up in the air, I think it's really dope that we got to release a little bit of positivity into that world. Yeah. And I hope people reflect with that. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it is a really, like I said, it's a really nice documentary for this time, Let's we got some people in here with us. Let's take some questions from the audience. Let's see, if you want to submit questions, go ahead and submit them now. I got a couple more that I'll throw at you guys while we wait for some questions to come in. Here we go. He raised his hand. Let's see. Okay. So now, how do you guys? What do you see as there's a degree of not that this is a final chapter, but this is the end of a chapter when you make a documentary that kind of explores this thing. Andre, what do you see as the kind of life of Monster Squad after this? Of course, it lives on, and new generations find it, as we saw at those screenings. I mean, there were kids that were my age and their parents were bringing them, and that was such a rad experience that I'm sure you see all the time of the next generation of monster kids seeing it. But what do you see as the kind of next chapter in the life of Monster Squad?
Kind of twofold there. It's kind of two bits in a response to that, and one is the obvious. With creative people like Fred and Shane and this universe that they kind of built, there's great stories there. Like, I want to see people enjoy other stories inside of this bubble, that they created. And, whether it's, something animated or, graphic novel like, or, web series, or, novelization, or a prequel or a pre-series. I still want to see, I honestly want to see this awesome black and white period television show of Dracula walking around in the early 1900s. He's been walking around for 100 years. What's he doing? He had to been doing something. And I would love to see that. And obviously there's things like, remakes and reboots, which I don't think are the best move in general, let alone for this. But, everybody talks about sequels or, whatever the ongoing stories are. Those would be amazing, as long as they're, they service the original story and the original fan base and have the right people involved, and it could be cool. But for Monster Squad, the movie that's already been made, it's really interesting because over the last month of doing a lot of these panels and interviews and podcasts for the release, the topic has been brought up more than a dozen times that interviewers or podcasters or, guests have mentioned, look, I grew up on this movie and I love it because of XYZ, but now I see it through a completely different lens because I have a 5-year-old of my own. And that struck me even more with what could, be the next chapter, because everybody starts saying, now this movie means something totally different to me, and it's just as strong. It's added on to my original affinity for it. And I think that's very interesting because we tried to discover, or at least crack the door open on why this movie impacted with people. And it's, it's on the surface, it's the authenticity of what's happening and the adventure and the kids and the heart that it's made with. but these people connected with something for some reason. You know, was it the archetypes? Was it the storylines? Was it the real life situations based in with this kind of fantasy world? You know, what did they really jive with and get tethered to? But I think it's all those real things that, whether it was on purpose for Fred and Shane or not, those archetypes last, and those will continue to go down the line. And what's interesting is, I'm not the one saying this, I am re-quoting more than one person over the last couple of weeks saying people will watch Monster Squad in 20 years because it will still mean something to them as humans or family members or parents or kids than they will of most of the giant kind of super animated movies that we have right now that no one's going to really give a rip about in 20 or 25 years. And I thought that was very interesting coming from, you know, other people to say something like that, because they're the ones that are going to pass it on and show it. And if that is true, then that means something is still unique about Monster Squad and what got put on screen. One that got put on page by Fred and Shane, and one that got put on the screen, because something connects, and it's very elemental or fundamental or anthropological or sociological or fantastical. You know, I think it's very interesting that those things still will key into people, you know, years down the road.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right, now we got some questions. Here we go. Kelly Gredner asked, Andre, what is the most heartwarming or memorable story you heard while on the road?
Well, we put a lot of the heartwarming and memorable ones in the movie. Obviously, one of the most impactful is our friend Sean Decker's. You know, that was on the last night of the 17 city tour. We were all exhausted and tired, and you know, I ended up surprising Henry, saying, hey, you know, you guys got to pull the gear out of the box again because Sean's got a great story. And you know, Henry explains that more, because I just kind of absorbed it and said, what did you just tell me? Would you mind sharing that with us? And he was like, I would love to share that for your film. And so I just kind of threw him onto Henry and the guys. So I'll let Henry talk more about that if he wants to, or his top picks. I think one of my favorite stories is one that actually didn't make it into the movie itself, and I can't remember his name, so I wish I did. I got to look it up. I still have it on my phone, actually. But I met a guy in Yonkers at the Yonkers Alamo, and he had just gotten you know, out of the Army, and he was with the 10th Mountain Division in Afghanistan for years. And he said, you know, one of the things that Army people do is we tag inside of the porta-johns, like wherever we are, like they just write stuff on the walls. I was like, yeah, okay, I can understand that. He goes, most people write lewd stuff or draw pictures of things. And he goes, but I went all around Afghanistan and I wrote Wolfman's got NARDS on inside of the porta-johns that the U.S. Army put up. So that was one of my favorite moments.
That's where you need the Wolfman's got NARDS toilet paper.
That's right.
Yeah.
And you know, once we knew about that, I said, Henry, we've got to go to Afghanistan, and like we've got to bring the camera and let's go find those porta-johns. And Henry was like, I don't know if that's a good idea.
We got to go capture a sunrise in Afghanistan.
Yes.
Perfect.
What about you, Henry? Was there a moment that was, you know, kind of most touching?
For the Sean Decker moment, we were in Virginia. It was the very last Alamo of the tour. We had just wrapped principal photography on the documentary, and we were packing everything up and we were going to celebrate. And then Andre came over and he said, hey, one more. And so we started to unpack everything. And he's like, we got something big here. And what that means is that this person has seen the Monster Squad, or he's a super fan of the Monster Squad, or somewhere in between. We didn't know what we were going to get, but we set up the camera and we set up audio, and Sean starts to talk. And he says, we asked him the question, what do you have in common with the Monster Squad? And he said, what do I have in common with the Monster Squad? Well, my name is Sean. I got kicked out of class for drawing. And when I was a kid, I was diagnosed with HIV. And at that point, when you're watching the camera, it's just a one camera setup. It dips a little bit right there because I'm getting verklempt and I wasn't expecting what was going to happen. And he started to relay this story about how it was a dark time for him. He didn't know how to comprehend the world, but when he went into the movie theater to watch Monster Squad, he had the opportunity to escape and to become part of this group of friends. And hearing how this guy just had his life flip upside down and Monster Squad was able to be medicine for that was huge. And I definitely think that's the moment that impacted me the most.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was even like the moment that you guys brought up with the screening that we did with Ryan. You know, somebody, I think even from the audience, asked a question about Brett, and you know, I'm sure Ryan has talked a lot about that over the years, but for whatever reason in that moment, it caught him, and it was a very emotional moment that ended up making its way into the film. So I think that you guys did a great job of showing the emotional side of that, not just from your perspective of being kids making this movie, but on the surface, yes, it's a movie from the 80s about a bunch of kids who fight monsters. But to your point there, Andre, you know, there's something deeper there. There's a reason that there's a documentary about it. There's a reason that it didn't do well when it came out in 1987, but we're still watching it today and showing our kids the movie. And I think that you guys did such a beautiful job of exploring that. And to kind of perfect segue, Wayne Walls says, I'm an older fan of Monster Squad, but the scene with Scary German Guy made me weep when I first saw it at the theater. I was 27. 10 years later, I got to share it with my kids. It's one of my favorite moments when my kids were growing up. So, I mean, movies are special, but I don't think you can say that about every movie. You know, there's something special about that idea of seeing this when you're kids and sharing it with your own kids. And the fact that with how different things are now in 2020 than they were in 1987, kids are still connecting with it.
And that's what shows kind of that interesting phenomenon. You know, I mean, you know, he mentions the one scene with Scary German Guy, and it's a kid's adventure movie in the neighborhood with supernatural beings, and we get a Holocaust reference, which is just for a split second.
Yeah.
And most kids watching that movie, if they were 14 and under, they didn't know what that was. But what did that do? That made them ask questions. What is that thing? What does that mean? I don't know what that is. And then they understand that and learn what it's about. Or they learn it a couple years later when they're in 10th grade or 11th grade and going over world history.
Right.
And, you know, so then that sparks kind of a connection with the film. And that, you know, to his point and, you know, to the point we were making, that's just another example of another layer of, you know, how this movie can weave into the fabric of someone's life. And, you know, that's just very interesting. And like you said, James, I don't look, there's plenty of movies in my life that I love that, you know, have made me want to learn things or change my life or whatever. But there's just something unique about the dynamic and the people that watch Monster Squad whenever they saw it for the first time. It doesn't matter. Because they all have these unique kind of experiences.
And that's all that feels, you know, there is an underlying darkness in the movie with Scary German Guy being a Holocaust survivor. And of course, you know, they're really trying to kill you. Like Dracula thought you guys were in the clubhouse, the treehouse when he tries to blow you up. So of course there's a darkness that's there, but you know, Fred and Shane were big kids themselves, and Fred especially still has that presence, I think, of being kind of this child at heart. And I do remember, like, I'm a kid of a broken home, and the fact that, you know, those issues are in there, but the movie never speaks like down to the audience. It always feels like it is speaking to you as a kid, where you don't understand this big scary world, whether it's, you know, monsters invading your neighborhood or your parents having to go to counseling and getting a divorce. Like, I think that there is something there that we connect with that's not present. You know, it's something that was very Spielberg and very Amblin of the time as well. And I think that's where the Goonies comparisons come from, even though, as you've stated, there's no hard feelings. It's always, there's room for Goonies and Monster Squad. But I think that's another thing that people connect with in the movie. It's not just your surface level, 80s, kids fighting monsters movie.
It's not, because a lot of those you see, like you said, the kids get talked down to, or they're seen as camp.
Yeah.
We don't have that here, and
No, it's honest.
Yeah.
The dialogue's very honest. The kids talk how kids talked back then, and it
Yeah.
didn't need to change its dialect. And so some people think it doesn't age well, but I think it ages perfectly because it was a slice of that time. It's a time capsule. You can go
Totally.
see what 1987 was about.
Totally.
And for a movie with fantastical monsters, everything else is grounded, and there's emotional character arcs and drama that's going on through it. It would be an interesting movie if there was no Universal monsters, and the fact that it has the monsters brings it up a notch.
Absolutely. Well, and so much of the Amblin era stuff gets the credit for the influence of Stranger Things, but I would say that Monster Squad is just a much an influence on Stranger Things. In some ways more, I think. So and we got another question in the Q&A from Tammy Coleman. She says, Andre, when you and Ryan were walking by the water and he pushes you in, was that planned?
It was a complete fly on the wall experience. I just caught it perfectly.
It's a documentary. Everything happens, as it goes, Tammy.
You guys were handballing it up.
We were, and a lot of our deleted scenes and bonus features, you'll see doing stuff like that. Now, what's interesting is we kind of thought of something cool to do, and so let's just kind of be a Ryan and Andre moment, which many people have seen in the past, whether it's on our podcast or at a screening or walking down the street or at the diner eating grilled cheeses. But it worked. It was fun. And it was just one of those kind of it's a nod to kind of like the friendship, because if we hadn't thought about that to set it up, Ryan probably would have done it anyway.
Yeah. Ryan is very much, I would say, out of everybody, you guys in real life do seem, there was so much of yourselves that you brought to those characters because you're kids, and you were probably all very much like those kids in the movie. But Ryan is just a grown-up Rudy. Like he's just that's a very Rudy thing to do, to just push you into the water. On the Ryan note, how are Ryan and Ashley doing right now? I know the zine has come out, the Monster Squad zine.
Grace Chan's I Heart Rudy Volume 2 is out. I think you can still order it on our Instagram, on the I Heart Rudy Instagram if you want one. That was something that Volume 1 was about Ryan and, sort of like a teen magazine look and feel. And then this one's a little bit kind of the same, but a little bit deeper. Yeah. Ryan's, look, we're all kind of, locked in and shut down and, kind of subdued. Yeah. Ryan's at home trying to, wait it out until we can get out into the world. Ashley just, she had her second child last year. Yeah. And so now she's got two little bugaboos, running around or, trying to run around in, kind of a half shut down town. And, I'm just, out trying to do projects and, working with Henry on other awesome things and getting their doc released. I chat with them occasionally. I know everybody's super busy, like Ashley's super busy because she's still teaching and, doing work there. And she's got, like I said, she's got two little ones now. Yeah. Her husband, David, I think has another show, another project that they're working on, which is awesome. Yeah. And, after a season or two of Project Blue Book, which was super rad. So I think everybody's just kind of, plugging away as much as we can. And I hope everybody else is doing great too. I just did we did sort of a virtual panel for a convention, 2 or 3 weeks ago, and, got to see everybody, kind of face to face on the webcam version. So everybody looks great and is doing well, hopefully.
Yeah. Well, if you don't have any more questions, we'll wrap this thing up by just having you guys tell people where they can see the doc, and it's out there in all the various platforms. But where can they see it?
Well, one, whatever your favorite VOD platform is, check that. If you've got your cable provider or iTunes, Amazon Prime, or Amazon Prime Rentals. That's US and Canada right now only. If you're a hard copy kid and you want physical media to put on your collection next to all your other Monster Squad stuff, you can order the Blu-ray from a couple retailers, Amazon.com being one of them. But check the
real fans order both. Real fans order both.
And look, there's plenty of those that have said, I ordered my Blu-ray, but I can't wait. I'm getting the iTunes right now. And that way I can have it on my phone. I can watch it wherever I go. That's pretty awesome. I think it's doing well. I don't have actual numbers. I don't get those reports until the end of the quarter, which is the end of the year. But from the feedback that we're getting, I don't know if this is just in the myopic view of the kind of fishbowl, so to speak. But I love the feedback and the interaction that the fans are sharing it with everybody, sharing it with social media. If you want to find where it is, go to thesquaddoc.com or follow at the Squad Doc, or follow myself at Andre Gower or at Andre Gower Official. Please follow my man Henry at H Dilla, because that's really the important thing. And James, you get this. It's like the Monster Squad's 30-something year livelihood. It's only been because these fans, collected it, connected, and shared it. And, we can only do so much, shouting on social media or shouting, down the street about the doc is out, or hoping for an algorithm to find it. It's going to be up to the fans to, kind of share it with their people and their groups and their friends and their social medias of like, hey, if you really want to watch something that reminds you of the things you love that you connected with, like movies or songs or books, this might be something for you. And that seems to be what's happening. And, we want to keep it going strong. So everybody keep doing that. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
And to the fans, we read your reviews on Rotten Tomatoes and Letterboxd and everything. So please keep that up too. We love taking a look at it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, and there's something very full circle about the fact that, fans carried the Monster Squad to the point that you guys made a documentary about the fandom. And now, a lot of those fans were lucky enough to end up in the documentary. And now it's up to the fans to carry on this kind of next part of it with the doc. Is there?
It sort of is, but I think that's what's kind of interestingly organic about it, because like we've said, it's not a making of doc, it's not a where they now doc, and it's not a straight fan service doc.
Yeah,
it's really a doc made about, for, and with people that connected with the Monster Squad, and a bunch of them are in it. And what I love hearing is when people that aren't in it, but they download it or buy it or rent it, and they're like, look, this person told this story. I felt like I was in that documentary. I felt like you interviewed me, because they all said exactly what I would have said. And so I think we found the great representatives, just right representatives to kind of, cover everybody out there, hopefully. And we love hearing those stories, like Henry said.
And
Absolutely.
for our next project, we're going to make a fan doc of Wolfman's Got NARDS.
Oh, whoa. Real meta.
We're going super meta. Oh no. Henry, have you pitched that already? When was that meeting?
Do I have to cosplay as myself cosplaying as
yes,
of course.
Rudy?
Of course.
Oh man.
Of course.
Or cosplay as Ryan as Rudy. Okay. Yeah. I love this idea. I'm all on board. Really quick, you mentioned a ton of special feature stuff and cutting room floor stuff. Is there plans to do a meteor version, maybe release? Maybe. All right, that's a big shrug.
We're going to try our best.
Yeah.
And whether it's on, we'll figure out some way to get that awesomeness out to everybody. Because Henry failed to mention one of the bits, but it's a music video that he likes to mention because it's super fun.
Oh, yeah.
And they like it because I eat shit at the end of it.
Is it for Rock Until You Drop? Is it set
It's,
to Rock Until You Drop?
It was actually at the Alamo, and I busted my ass at the end of that music video, and that's
just
where they
fall-
want to get
you
that's
just
where they
fall a
want to
lot
get
in
these
the stack
special
when they're-
features out.
Yeah.
It's
But it's funny.
Edward Cheese Band music video.
Yeah.
Oh, so good. Well, fingers
Yeah.
crossed, crosses crossed, everything crossed that we that sees the light of day, the sunlight of day one day. But dudes, thank you so much. It's great to
Thank
see
you.
your faces again, even if it's virtually. But you know, everybody's doing the best we can right now until we can all come together and watch Wolfman's Got Nards in
yeah.
a theater.
Yep.
And
we'll do it, or a drive-in near you. Let's go.
there you go.
Let's
There
go.
you go.
Henry.
Yeah.
That's already
And
sort of lined up and happening, so it's good.
I did notice that, like, probably, you know, very recently, because I know in October it wasn't available, but Monster Squad is back on a lot of streaming services now. I think Crackle, Pluto, if you have the IMDb TV channel on Amazon Prime, so it's back to watch. So do a nice double feature if you don't. I'm sure everybody already owns it, but you know, if you need to stream it, it's back where you can do a double feature with Wolfman's Got Nards.
That'd be great.
Awesome.
All right, guys. We'll see you soon.
See ya.
Thank you again. Everybody
Thank you so
go.
much.
Everybody
Thanks,
go.
Fangoria. Thanks, Tara. Thanks, everybody. This is awesome. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you guys, of course, are probably already following Fango, but I should just go ahead and say follow Fangoria for you know, all the future announcements on the next Convo Fangos. These happen very often. So thank you guys for joining us for this one, and stay safe. We'll see you soon.